Salam, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered. And as you can see, we are finally on video. We're just going to briefly introduce ourselves. I'm Anam.
I'm Umama.
I'm Hannah.
I'm Nazish.
I'm Mina.
So for today's episode, we're going to be talking about who has it worse. And obviously, today we're bringing the girls' perspective. So I just want to generally ask you ladies a general question. And that is that in the society we're living in right now, who has it harder, the girls or the guys?
When it goes back to back in the day, I feel like women have always struggled. I feel like men have always had the upper hand. And the fact that that was so prominent back in the day, it really affects to how women are treated today. And even to this day, it's the 21st century, it's 2020. We still are fighting for rights. Women still don't have equal pay. Women still have to worry about walking to their car late at night when they're coming from somewhere. So there's just so many little things that girls have to be aware of that guys don't have to. And I feel like if you really look at these nitty-gritty details or even overall perspective, I genuinely think girls have it worse. But obviously it can be taken in very different perspectives, but that's just my answer.
So how about we talk about maybe how it is if we look at our religion, so Islam, versus our culture. So how do you guys see the way women are treated, or that in our religion versus how we actually are treated? So obviously, in our religion, we're supposed to be treated a certain way, and then versus culturally, we're treated a complete different opposite way. So
what's interesting is that Islam was one of the first religions to give women the rights that no other religion experienced, that being the three Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. And which is really sad, because when people have this connotation to Islam, they assume that women are oppressed, and that is not at all what the religion stands for. And this concept of mixing culture with religion has really impacted how girls are treated and how they're seen societally, especially within our communities and our families.
And the thing is, when there's an outsider who's not Muslim, we kind of ruin our own name, because the fact that we mix culture and Islam together, we ruin our own name and we ruin our own religion, which is so sad, because to this day, Muslims are very degraded in any way. And the reason we are degraded, it comes back to us. We're the reason why we are put in such a bad light, because we can't even support each other, and we also mix culture with religion, and they're completely two separate different things.
yeah. So going off of that, let's kind of start off with how we were raised in our home life. So let's kind of briefly talk about any gender roles that you guys had to do being girls, and obviously now growing into women. What are some things that you guys kind of had to do based on your gender?
I feel like we can all agree that as girls, we were all raised to always, be in the kitchen, cooking, cleaning, taking care of the house. All those responsibilities were put on us, doing the laundry, just cleaning up after everyone at the dinner table. I feel like that was always put on us. What do you guys think?
I feel like we all have a different perspective too, because we don't have the same siblings. We might not have a brother. So based on you specifically, I know that you have an older brother. So how did that affect your upbringing?
I think honestly, in my house, alhamdulillah, the responsibilities were equally given to all of us, all three of us. My brother was not expected to just leave the table, dirty, messy, and me and my sister were not expected to clean up after him. I think, alhamdulillah, my parents did a really good job of explaining to all three of us that we all have responsibilities and we're not supposed to unload it onto each other. But obviously, being a girl, I feel like it wasn't as equal. It couldn't have been completely equal.
Regardless.
No matter how hard they try, it did come down to the girls.
Yeah.
So for me, I have 3 other sisters, and now that I look back at it, I was just why would my parents even compare it to oh yeah, guys do this and that, when they have 3 other girls, four daughters. But then now that I think about it, disregarding, especially with Desi culture, they always say oh yeah, guys can do this, girls can't do that. So for me specifically, even though my parents give me a lot more freedom, and obviously they can't really dignify roles because it's all daughters, my mom, sometimes she would be if I'm out late, she's oh yeah, girls are not supposed to be out that late. Guys can do whatever they want. And that's so problematic, because it goes to that phrase that boys will be boys, but it's never about it's always girls shouldn't do this, girls shouldn't do that, but guys can get away with everything. And the fact that I only have sisters, I still hear it. And I was just thinking if I had a brother, I'd probably have it way worse, which is kind of sad.
I feel like it's definitely a community thing too. That's why you have no brothers, but still it's a cultural thing for sure, because you don't have that experience. You know, you're not exposed to having another brother in your house, and still you're being compared to a guy. So it's definitely a cultural thing.
So how about any one of you guys?
I grew up in, ironically, a matriarchy. So it's always been like women in charge. I was raised by a single mother. And so I've always kind of had this idea of like women being in power. But at the same time, my mom's like older siblings, they're all like baby boomers. And so they all have like these really outdated, I guess, ideas about like what a woman's place is and what she should, or I guess like what me and all my female relatives should like strive to attain to. So like my mom is always just like, she tells me to like focus less on my gender and more on like getting my education and like taking care of myself. But I have one relative who told me that when I got married that I should try to serve my husband. And I thought it was really ironic because this relative doesn't even like men. So the idea that, you know, she will never see herself in a relationship with a man, but she's still telling like her nieces and daughters that when they get married that she has to like become subservient to a man. And then I also have other relatives who told me that I can't sit a certain way. I like to sit with my legs crossed a lot, or like crisscross applesauce. And so if I'm just like sitting minding my own business, I'll have somebody be like, Amina, close your legs. And I think that that's really inappropriate because most of the time it was like I was a child and I was kind of just like sitting in a way that made myself comfortable. And like that happened a lot. So even though I was raised in like a matriarchy, my family still had these like really outdated gender roles about like what I could and couldn't do as a woman, and it was really uncomfortable, but I like shrugged it off as I became an adult.
So that's really interesting because my family went the entire opposite end of the spectrum. Being the firstborn daughter and having a brother that's only 15 months younger than me, we were raised pretty much like twins. Like everything that I did, he did. Everything he did, I did. But even so, as we've gotten older, like when it comes to chores and whatnot, we kind of assume different domestic responsibilities. For example, I would take more of a role in helping my mom clean, helping my mom do certain things that did pertain directly to the house, while my brother would do other things that would be assumed like a man's job, like taking out the garbage or taking my car to the shop. And I think that to an extent, because gender roles exist, like there will never be like that 100% total equality between like males and females, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But the type of equality that we are actively worried about is like the injustices we face like in the workplace, or for example the fact that there's a culture where it's like, well, a girl shouldn't be out at night, she shouldn't be wearing something specific, instead of saying boys should have more control or they should be more in charge of what they're doing.
Yeah, and like going off of that, I wanted to ask you guys towards like our next question, and that is when we're growing up, like, you know, a girl, we're kind of asked to do so many certain things. Like we're asked to talk a certain way, behave a certain way, dress a certain way. And then for someone like me who has brothers, you kind of think like, how come they're never told to do anything a certain way? Like they can kind of just like live. Like they don't have any certain things that they have to do, like maybe, like obviously I'm not saying they don't have any like responsibilities, and that, you know, you can watch the guys episode for that, but for the girls, like from a very young age we're kind of taught that. Like for me, like I had curly hair, so like always like you can't have it down, it looks like like bad, or like your skin tone, like I was kind of darker when I was little, so like that's seen as like not beautiful, and like just all these little things. And if you think about it, like I was like five or six, and you're being told all these little things. So it really like changes the way like you grow up, you know.
So like, the thing is, going off of that, I feel like specifically like, and I feel like most cultures, like, I mean, back in the day, it's like, oh yeah, all the woman has to look forward to is getting married.
Yeah.
And the thing is, even now to this day in Desi communities or even like other communities as well, what's so prominent is just like basing it off the looks and like and like when I do go out or whatever, I feel like the one thing that every auntie or mom or whatever they say is like, what will other people say? But I know for a fact they won't do that about a guy. And I
Yeah.
know like in my community specifically, there will be a guy that's like drug dealing. He's like doing all of this and that, and everyone knows about it. He's super open with it, and they won't question it. They will say boys will be boys. But when it comes to like a woman, she's showing too much ankle, she's showing too much like neck or whatever, they're like, oh yeah, she's never gonna get married. And that's so sad and problematic, because when it comes down to a woman's worth, they think about how marriable she is, which is
Yeah.
so sad, because she has a lot more to offer than just being like married off to some random man who obviously offers nothing. It's
And I
just so
feel like
annoying.
also on to add on to that,
I don't mean obviously offers nothing. I mean, I mean like the thing is, when it comes down to it, like the man,
The girl can have so
the
much
girl,
more going
yeah,
on
the
for
girl,
her.
the girl has so
Yeah.
much going on for her, but the man himself, like, yeah, he has something going on for him too, but they won't look at his other problematic
Yeah,
side.
they won't look
It
at the
always comes down
flaws.
to the woman being the problem, especially when it comes to like divorce and stuff like that too. Like,
yeah.
women are always blamed to be the problem. That she's just like that, or she's just
But
making
that's the
excuses.
thing that like people refer to the girls, the daughters, as like the izzat of the household. Have you guys heard that a lot? So they don't look at what the guys are doing. Like the guys can, like you said, the guys can do whatever, but because the reputation, the izzat relies on the girl, the daughters of the household. I feel like that's the biggest thing in our culture that we, have that's our biggest problem, we put it all onto the girls.
What's interesting is that girls grow up like viewed in a very specific way by society, whether that's Western culture or our own, like personal cultures or religious culture. And not only are girls seen as like the izzat, which is the honor of their household, but they're seen as the one that continues to care for their parents when they're older. They're expected to assume certain responsibilities that the boys are not. For example, a daughter is expected to bring home her mother-in-law's or her parents-in-law and take care of them as they get older, while a man is expected to do the opposite and be the head of his household. So what do you guys think about specific cultural things that you feel are a little unfair in our communities?
I just think like with our society now, there's so many stories and situations where I've heard like a girl could be literally studying to be a doctor. She even gets her doctorate degree. And she's working so hard to have like this other life rather than just be a woman, like that she's gonna just end up getting married and not having like she's just gonna be a housewife. And it's just so sad to me, like when I see these like hear these stories and they get married off and then either the in-laws or like close families don't see anything, like they disregard her degree, her intelligence, her her strive to wanting to be like independent. And it's just so sad that all of that kind of is just like not seen at all. And I mean we just kind of talked about it, but I don't know, it just makes me sad, like.
One thing
So
that bothers me the most is, like, I hear this a lot, even within my own family, is that when a woman's around the age of getting married and pretend she's in, like, during, like, getting a degree or whatever, they're like, who cares? Just drop it. Like, you can always continue to get your degree. Like, get yourself married first. And that's kind of, like, problematic because they think that marrying her off to a man is a lot more, like, satisfactory for them than her getting a degree and being
But
better
they
off
won't
for
say
herself
that to
and
a
being
guy.
independent. Yeah. Because the thing is, for a guy, which is, I'm pretty sure they'll touch on it, is like the guy's the one that has to bring in the income and the money. So they think that the woman shouldn't have anything like going for herself in a sense. So like her degree and her education isn't valued as much as the man. Because technically, like in our culture too, it's seeming that like the man always brings in the money and does like the work, and the female ends up being like a housewife and taking care of the kids and everything.
You know what, aside from that, even in Western culture, marriage and childbearing and all those things that are typically associated with a girl still impact you in the workforce. For example, a woman that gets pregnant while she's working is assumed to have less of a dedication to her job than a man does. They'll never face like the same criteria of being like being interviewed under the assumption like, oh, she might leave the company, so it'd be better to hire a man because he won't do that. He won't have a kid and leave. And it's statistics and data will show that women that go ahead and assume like their traditional roles of like having children, getting married, they find it harder to come back to work and climb up in that position because of that assumption that women will take on domestic roles instead of actual working roles.
How do you guys feel? How do you guys feel about guys not being taught? Like, I mean, I'm sure guys, a lot of them are taught, but like generally, like not being taught domestic roles, like it just all being towards the girl or the woman.
I think it's really frustrating because I feel like especially if you're like both adults and taking care of a household, you should be contributing to like the housework because it's kind of like unreasonable to expect one person to do everything that it takes to like maintain a household. Like my mom, she did it because she had to. She had to be mother and father. That's actually why I wish her a happy Father's Day every year. But she had to, when we were really little, she had to take care of the house, cook dinner, do the laundry, and then she also had to go to work and, pay all of the bills. And so that's a lot for one person to take. So if you're in like a 2-person household, or if you're just in a, like, where it's men and women, or a man and a woman, I feel like it should be like a even distribution, because that is a lot to take on. And me personally, I'm not the domestic type. I really don't like cooking and cleaning and things like that. So it's kind of like I'm expecting that, like, when I enter a relationship with a person, that we work something out, because if they expect me to do like 100% of the cooking, cleaning, laundry, all of that stuff, it's not going to work. That's just bottom line.
I also, sorry, go
Do you want
ahead.
to go ahead? Okay, so not to be blunt, but to say that for boys to not be taught domestic roles like cooking, cleaning, and helping out with the household, it's almost contradictory to like how the Prophet ﷺ said that we should treat our wives, or not our wives, but the wives, because the Prophet was recorded several times helping Khadija, helping his daughter Aisha, and with chores, household things. So how is it that the Prophet ﷺ, the best man to ever walk the earth, can go ahead and assume like a humble position as helping his wife domestically, but these little boys cannot?
You know what the funniest thing is? Like, mothers literally treat their sons as if they're like a prince. Like, have you guys not heard, oh, mera shehzada hai, he's my prince, you know? And that's what they always say about all these guys, because they're not expected to do anything but bring in that income. It's like, oh no, you don't have to lift a finger. Like, your wife will do that for you.
Yeah, and then nobody ever tells them no. Have you ever told someone? You can tell, like, when you meet somebody that they've never been told no in their life, and then that usually ends up like you get attacked or abused or something like that by telling somebody no, or a man no, like when they've been pampered, and catered to their entire lives. Like, you can always tell.
Going back to what Hannah was saying about like roles and stuff like that, I feel like also when it comes down to like I feel like there shouldn't be a gender when it comes to like chores and like just any like typical task. Exactly. Because you know how like women, like, they don't know how to change a tire or fix like stuff on a car or whatever, and like, men don't really usually know how to cook. And I feel like culturally, when it comes down to it, like, we're kind of in that sense, because we're like, oh, a guy cooking, that's so feminine, like, and that's like problematic like in our parents, because they'll be like, oh no, like they, like, your parents will be like, oh, like, I'll teach the son to do this and I'll teach the daughter to like cook and clean. Right. So that's also a problem within like our parents too, because they have that embedded in themselves. I
agree. I think everyone should be taught all these like basic roles, cooking, cleaning, everything. Like, these are things that everyone should know. It's a lifestyle, but preferences is what matters. Like, if a girl wants to be a housewife, then do it,
Yeah,
totally.
And you shouldn't degrade a woman for wanting to be a housewife.
If she wants to live with her in-laws, if she wants to, like, take care of her family, that's her choice. But it should never be forced on that woman.
And I think that's the problem, is that we just assume, or we just push all these things like to every single woman out there, thinking like that's what they're going to do for the rest of their life. And that's again when it becomes a problem.
Because I feel like when it comes to like older people, or like in our culture, everyone determines our future for us. It never comes down to us. Like, we never have a say what we want to do. And even like for me specifically, like when I'm thinking about my future, like subconsciously I just think like, oh yeah, like, will my parents want me to do this? Not what's best for me, but like, oh, what would other people think? And it's really sad, because at the end of the day, within our culture, we always end up thinking about like, oh, what will other people say? Because like they're more like predominantly more harsher on the women than they are on like men.
You know what's interesting is oftentimes when in your community you hear someone's gotten engaged and you're like saying your congratulations and whatnot, when they're talking about the man, they're like, yeah, he's gonna be a doctor, he's gonna be an engineer. And then once they start talking about his fiance, they're like, yeah, she's so pretty. Like,
they'll talk about her physical features, but never about accomplishment, what she's doing in school, what she's gonna do with her career.
She could literally be like something higher than the
guy. She could be a CEO, and they'll be like, she has crooked teeth, like, ew,
She makes really good biryani. Like, that's all that matters. So I think we kind of hit on the whole idea of like how kind of the guy is raised, the girl is raised, and all the kind of roles we follow. So, what do you guys think is a solution for this? Like to kind of break these barriers, and obviously, like inshallah, all of us, could be like mother-in-laws, or we could be raising our own daughters. How are you guys going to be changing this whole, like this whole gender role kind of thing that that we're kind of put through?
I feel like we really just have to stop. We have to break that dynamic and stop expecting these roles from our daughters. Like, if our daughter does not want to go and like be a housewife, don't assume that position for her, and don't baby our sons into like not doing anything and have his sisters do all the work for him.
You know what? I think we can take like a call to action even earlier than when we're mothers ourselves. For example, we're living in a world right now, we're living in a society where it's no longer feasible to have like a single income, and it's no longer the norm for a man to go to school while girls assume like the household position. Because I mean, now when I speak to any girl I know, she's in college or she has plans of going to college. She doesn't automatically assume like, yeah, I'm gonna get married like they did. Like, this is not the 1900s anymore. And so once we have that, it's like entertaining the idea of, yeah, if I'm working and you're working, I'm not the one that's also cooking. You can make eggs, you can make cereal. Like, if we're coming home tired, you can't automatically assume that dinner will be on the table because we're doing the same thing. So why would I take on even more than that?
Like, compromises have to be made. I feel like in the household, people need to start compromising and just dividing all the work. But yeah, go ahead, Umama.
Yeah, so what I was gonna say is also like telling your parents too, because the thing is, I know for a fact, like my parents, like they always bring it back, like, oh yeah, girls can't do this, guys have to do that, and honestly, like it gets me so frustrated. So I like try to like explain as best as I could, but without like being demeaning and degrading, because like you can't be disrespectful to your parents, and also like they do come from like they come from Pakistan, so obviously they don't know better. So like I will try my best to like teach them, and also like they're gonna be grandparents too, so like like they're gonna be raising your kids too in a sense. So like you want to make sure that they have like a good mindset too, because at the end of the day, they're gonna be around like my children's lives too, and they're gonna be giving them advice, and I don't want them to like bring in like this like women and men are an equal type of like ideology into their lives too.
I think it's also really important to start calling out our community members, whether it be like our aunties, uncles, guys, or whatever it may be, even each other. Like I think the biggest problem like that I see is the fact that we do mix our culture with our religion. Like again, you said there's so many beautiful things like said about like how women should be treated and their roles and stuff, and we take our culture and we completely disregard it. So I think it's really important. Like if an auntie is saying something like, hey, like why is your daughter still studying, blah, 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 like call it out, like obviously not in a disrespectful way, but like just say like, is there anything wrong with her continuing her like to continue
and
her
easier
education?
said than done. Like there's always a way to say it in a proper manner.
Yeah, of course.
The first thing you should take into mind is like don't be disrespectful.
Yeah. But I think it's still important to call it out.
And I think another solution could also be in how people educate their sons, because a lot of the times that you realize that boys grow into men not knowing a lot about women, and then they take those like assumptions and stereotypes and then they apply it to all women. Like there's no reason that a boy should shrink away in fear because they hear the word period or a menstrual cycle or something like that. Like you shouldn't be embarrassed if somebody asks you to stop by the store and get some pads. And the same thing goes for like applying feminine and masculine roles and everything. So like showing a boy that it's not necessarily degrading to know how to cook, to know how to sew, to know how to clean or anything like that. None of that is degrading. And it all starts in how like we educate our boys. Because when you do that, I kind of feel like it leads to like young men having a sense of emotional intelligence, which I'm noticing like a lot of boys, at least my age, don't have, because they still like their idea of women is still like a caricature rather than like actual people. And I don't know. I just feel like boys can be educated in the same way that girls are educated just in general about themselves, their own bodies, about women's bodies, about health, about likes, dislikes, and all of that stuff. I feel like that all just like they all play into each other.
I think it's really important also at the end of the day to remember that before we're men and women, we're Muslims. Like we are all equally servants of God. And how are we going to take any position other than that which He spoke for us? Like in the Quran, there's an entire surah dedicated to women that's highlighting exactly how important it is women are in our like religion. And so how can we take from our religion, which tells us to treat men and women with equality, to treat women with the standards that they deserve, and then we contradict that entirely by following a culture or practices that demean women and, you know, contain them to like one sort of position, one sort of like responsibilities.
Yeah, and we should also always put religion above culture. It
For
outweighs
sure.
it by a ton.
And that's with anything, like any topic we talk
Yeah,
about.
that's true.
So, well, I think with that being said, that concludes our episode. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And yeah, Allah Hafiz.